Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we have our debate. This is very important debate for us. We have our world famous debater, Professor David Smith, Professor Rob, Professor Paul, and Mr. Willie. For today's debate from the government side, we have our Professor Rob. From opposition side, Professor David Smith. Mr. Willie, thank you for joining. Professor Paul and Mr. Willie, still we do not decide. You go for government or oppositions. You can decide yourself. You can take few minutes because I think this kind of debate for you is new. Professor Rob and David Smith, you can help our speaker first, then we will start our debate.
Sure.
Yes. Mr. Paul, you want to go for government side or opposition side?
I'll support the statement. So government side, I guess. But we're getting lazy, and not just lazy, but stupid as well.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Willie, Mr. Hill, you can go to opposition side. Is that okay for you? Hello? Can you
Cannot hear you.
No sounds coming through.
Yes. Today's topic is, does technology make people lazy? Can you hear me? I think Mr. Hill, you can join again. And you can
his
go
microphone's
for
his microphone's not working. I think he can hear us, but his microphone appears not to be working.
Okay. So in that situation, first I would like to give chance our honorable Prime Minister for today's Parliament, Professor Rob.
Sounds good. And if you're not speaking, please mute. We've got some background noise. It sounds like people doing cement work. It's not Sharif. It's David. So there's some noise flowing through David's office. All right. Not sure what it is. The government proposition. Sharif, thanks for having me. The government proposition today is: does technology make you lazy? And it's hard to argue against this. I mean, given my own personal experience, when you have something that takes over and automates a particular action, you're no longer doing that action anymore, and you depend on that technology increasingly. If you look at how we apply technology, it is to supplement and help people, but we often forget the unintended consequences of doing that. What then do the people do? If we take away certain areas of work, giving them free time, where is that free time applied? That's the part we rarely, if ever, do when bringing forward new technology. We do not think about what the implications will be of applying the technology. In the first industrial revolution, we had large shift of labor. A lot of people that had careers that were raised up working for others suddenly found that that factories which were new at the time were doing the jobs that they have, and all the way up into current day, when you have companies like Amazon with automated warehouses and increasingly automated distribution systems, the people that are replaced, well, Amazon gets rid of them, lays them off. And then what then do those people do? So the underlying issue, and by the way, eventually we recover. Folks do find other things to do, and jobs are restored, and they can continue to have meaningful lives. But we don't proactively think of the impact, retrain the people, and put them into position. Now, we're really talking about lazy. I mean, the proposition here is laziness, not necessarily work. But if you look, even as television came to market. And that came to market when I was a kid. Before we were watching heavy TV, we were outside playing, getting into a lot of trouble, but outside playing and doing things were a lot of fun. TV came and we started watching TV instead of going outside. And for parents, it was a convenient babysitter. So it wasn't the kids were becoming lazy. The parents who otherwise would be monitoring the children, let the TV do the monitoring. Now, let's be clear, not all parents monitored kids before there was television either. It's certainly, I was largely unmonitored in my youth. But whatever little monitoring and oversight we had, to a large extent, was passed over to the television, and the television became the way that the kids were taught, as opposed to the parents teaching the children what was right and wrong. Often the kids learn from the television. Now, in that case, I'm talking about the parents letting the TV do their job and forgetting about the need to assure that the kids had a well-rounded education, or at least understood the basics of living. And education didn't step up and fill that gap. In fact, I would argue that education, as we move to more automated ways of doing things, has let us down, because they didn't teach kids some of the basics, how to fold clothing, how to wash clothing, how to make your own food. It's just easier to go to a fast food place and get the food that way. And diets went sideways. Obesity became a problem, which hadn't been a problem before. And obesity is a sign of laziness. It hadn't been a problem before, and we did nothing other than now aggressively requesting that people exercise to mitigate the problem. But we never went back into education and said, okay, we need to reinstitute some of these sessions to give people basic skills, because machines aren't yet doing their laundry, folding their clothes, or making their food, except in fast food, and fast food's doing them harm because it's the wrong mix of calories and sugars. And so in the end, as we roll technology in, the tendency is for people to rely increasingly on the technology and not do the work themselves. We can certainly see that in terms of researching opinions and politicians. Here in the United States, we're going through an event called the January 6th committee, and what's really clear is that an awful lot of people in our country, and in their country, are failing to do just basic research. I mean, they don't have the time to watch the January 6th committee hearings, because they're being told what the committee decides, and being told that the committee is deciding things that are unimportant, and so therefore they don't need to watch. They're glued in front of Fox TV, and Fox TV is doing all the work for them and telling them how to think. That's problematic, because we really need a populace that does their own research, forms their own opinions, and isn't told by anybody what it is they should believe or what it is that they should do. Clearly, if it's a chain of command thing, that's one thing. But if it's somebody attempting to take over a democracy, it's something else again. And so we have to be really clear about, as we apply technology, how do we assure the technology isn't doing more harm than good, or doing unintended harm along with the good? The technology is neither good nor bad. It's how it's used that results in that good or bad outcome. And at least to date, society has not done a good job of assuring that a technology is applied minimizes the collateral damage of the technology. Now, to give you another example, we're planning on automating long-haul trucking, putting in automated systems to allow truckers to not have to drive the trucks. And that doesn't mean we're not going to put people in the trucks, because we know that that automated trucks, autonomous trucks, can be easily robbed. And so we'll undoubtedly put people in the trucks to manage them, to keep them from being robbed. But what are those people going to do? Are they going to sit back and just watch TV and vegetate, or we'll give them something meaningful to do, so that they expand their minds, so that they provide a benefit while the trucks are moving, and while they're basically a captured audience inside the truck? Will they sit in the truck and watch Netflix, or will they sit in the truck and do real work for their shift? Now, clearly, they may be a mix, and some entertainment isn't a bad thing. But if it's all entertainment, then what happens to those truckers? What is their flexibility? What is their contribution to society? And if we find we don't need babysitters for these trucks anymore, and all they've been doing is watching TV all of this time, what then will be their job after they leave that one? So this laziness creates an ongoing potential for problems, societal problems, where people are not gaining the experiences that they need. They're not gaining the skills that they may need in the future, and they're not being well-rounded enough to be able to make their own decisions. They will increasingly be told by others what to do, and many times those others may be hostile foreign agents. They may be companies that are doing bad things. They could even be companies and parties that are doing good things. But having a populace that blindly follows anybody, as we're seeing what's happening in the United States, would be a bad thing. And so you could argue the same thing. We're seeing the same kind of problem, far worse in places like Russia and China, where autocracy is taking control and the citizens are bound. And in both states, there was a great potential for both to go to democracy, but the people gave up the fight to assure their rights, and as a result, they lost their rights. And so we need a populace that's active. We need a populace that isn't vegetating. We need the populace that do their own research and form their own opinions, because people are smart if we give them a chance to be smart. But if we de-educate them, if we train them not to do their own research, if we train them that machines will solve all problems, if we train them that technology is the answer, we're invariably going to have an outcome that we don't like. We need to think through the consequences of these technologies. We need to assure the health and well-being of our citizens, and we need to ensure that they stay active, engaged, and intelligently engaged in their careers, so that they are contributing members of society and don't become dependents. And having a citizen of our population of dependents would be problematic. So right now, technology makes people lazy. We have to make sure that we put in place policies that ensure those people remain engaged, that they get a well-rounded education, that they don't rely on computers to write their papers or pull research unaltered off the web and put their own name on it. Those things still need to go into place, because we need people to think and form their own opinions. And if we lose that, then we will have a nation of dependence, and it won't end well for us. Sharif, you're muted.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for today's Parliament. Now I request Opposition Leader for today's Parliament, Professor David Smith.
Prime Minister Rob, I loved your comments, and I particularly loved your example of the autonomous truck with the caretaker in back, who I think the caretaker in back will be living in the metaverse, and we'll be using that as part of the way. And who knows what they can do in the metaverse, create new farms, create cities. But yeah, technology has changed us. And too many of us equate computers as technology. You know, back when mankind farmed using sticks and stones, intense physical labor. And then we began to use iron and metal. Oh, and then we used horses and mules to farm. We got lazier with each one of those, right? And then we wouldn't use tractors. And then we used other things like that. So what has technology done? If I look from a meta view, God has made us lazy. But on the other hand, technology has allowed us to do other things. And work became different. And that's what's real important about it, as we look at the ways we can use technology. You know, I love the fact that we can communicate instantly worldwide. Well, has this made us lazy that we can instantly communicate worldwide and exchange programs like this? Or does it make us more efficient? Does it make us more connected? Oh, because of technology, I don't do as much face-to-face. I got up this morning at 5 and went to a breakfast meeting at 6, face-to-face. Could I have done it by Zoom? Yeah, but not. I didn't want to do this one by Zoom. Well, is that lazy or not? No, we choose how we use technology. And you've heard me say before in these programs, my definition is technology is that we are applying with a result. And technology doesn't have to be a thing, but yet we always equate it as a thing. And, you know, do we get over-reliant on some technology? Yeah. You know, I wish I could wean my son from some of the games he plays. But that's kind of where he is now. And what's interesting is he's beginning to wean himself.
Hello?
Because we get into it that way.
Hey, Moon.
And the convenience is there. Sharif, I don't know about you, but I use my GPS a lot now. Is that making me lazy? I mean, before I would pull out paper maps and look at it.
College job, and now it's
And as I begin to do that, I move my arms more. But boy, the GPS has made me less lazy because I'm doing more now than I did before. And all the other things, it is. Yesterday was 104 here in Austin. I wasn't going to go out and jog around the block in 104 weather. But when I got on my treadmill, was I still able to exercise? Yes, inside the house with its air conditioning. Wow. So I use technology to do exercise that I couldn't do the old-fashioned way with running around the block in that hot weather, or the same thing with the cold weather. So technology has made it where I can exercise any day of the year independently of the weather outside. And let's look in business. Has technology made us lazier in business? If I go back and look at the statistics of business, the average workday has increased as we've used technology. We get a lot more done. But technology, because of how it's connected, has actually increased the workday for most people. And so I don't think that fits the definition of laziness as well. The other thing that technology has done for me is it lets me do more things. Lets me do a lot more things. And to me, being active is not lazy. It doesn't mean I'm going to go and use a hand lawnmower to cut my yard. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go and use a swinging blade to cut my yard. But do I still go out and do that? Yes. So technology hasn't made me lazier. It's made me more efficient. And as we look at the people who are under our parliament here, I think we can say that a lot of the quality of life has improved because of technology. Yes, do we have people who are obese? Because they're not disciplined. So if you begin to look at it, technology opens up new possibilities where workers and people who want to achieve become more efficient, they become stronger in that. But lazy people can become lazier as well. So it really depends on the individual's mindset and the mindset of how we use the technology. Because again, technology is the application of knowledge to achieve a result. And all those results depend on how we, as the human, apply that to get our results. So does technology make us lazier? In some definitions, yes. In some definitions, definitely not. With some people, yes. With some people, definitely not. Has technology enabled the world to grow, become connected, for us to be able to feed the masses today because of technology? If I was still farming with a stone and a stick, and if I was still a hunter-gatherer, boy, I know I couldn't support the population I have, even the area around me here, much less globally. So, Sharif, that's kind of my thoughts is it depends on you, but technology has given us so many advantages that the disadvantages of the people who misuse and become lazy, they're far outweighed. So thank you for this time.
Thank you, Professor David Smith, for your excellent analysis and debate. Now I request our technology minister from the government side, Professor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Sharif, and thanks for the comments thus far. So, I agree that the devil is in the details. So in general, yes, I would say technology makes us lazier. I mean, automation has been mentioned, removal of mundane tasks, etc. One of the things that we're seeing right now is the so-called Great Resignation. And a big part of that is technology replacing jobs. But the pandemic is, of course, is another big part of it, because it's caused people to reevaluate their goals in life and their, why they're doing what they're doing. And with lots of people out of work, the idea of a guaranteed minimum income is there. And there were a lot of, in Canada anyway, there were a lot of government sources of government money to people that were out of work because of the pandemic, etc. And people were, of course, forced to work at home. So, the vast majority of people this was fine for, but it did make a certain population, lazier, not wanting to work, free money from the government, and people wanted to sort of continue this. And I heard all these stories of, people using this money to do house renovations and build decks, and because they had the time and they had the money from the government. So in general, it makes us lazier, I think, but there's specific technologies that are, that go against that. I mean, one of the biggest disruptors in our society, I think, was the advent of the iPhone and other cell phones, basically handheld supercomputers. So it's double-edged, because when people are out for a walk, you see people walking very slowly, not watching where they're going, looking at their phones constantly. But there are, apps on that phone for fitness, and there's Fitbits and Garmin watches for tracking fitness. And for some people, those fitness apps are motivators to get people to exercise and be less lazy. Or look at the, with an access to information instantly. There's, many people look at WebMD. So if there's something wrong, if there's a health issue, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because people can get lots of information on the web on, if they have certain ailments. But some people go overboard, and they skip going to doctors, because they can just look and say, I'm fine, I'm not fine, based on their own so-called research on the web on their medical conditions. So also people can very easily get addicted to their phones, to the different apps, and they can suck people in. There's too much information out there, so people need really good filters to look at that information. So, if you define laziness as not earning an income and not doing something productive for society, or assisting, working for a company, or doing something, with too much information, I mean, people's minds seem to be very active, searching things, looking up things. But, if you look at the classical definitions of laziness, this leads to the kids spending all their time in the basement surfing the web. I mean, are they lazy, or are they just misdirected away from employment, doing what the traditional employment, so that their time is being sucked up? I mean, their minds are active, whether they're gaming or whether they're web surfing or whatever. So the technology definitely changes the brain and the way we perceive things and the way we do things. I'll give you the example of the GPS came in, and without a GPS, people are actually, our brains changed. I mean, we used to follow maps, have better mental pictures of where things were. But now, if we completely rely on GPS, I know some people that put in GPS to go to the corner store that they've been going to their entire life, which is 5 minutes away. They is that laziness, or is that stupid? I mean, the mind, we tend to there's mechanisms in the mind that want to simplify our life and allow us to do things more efficiently. And, that could be called, that it can lead to a very lazy sort of sort of mind. And many people get opinions from their access to information, but many of those opinions, as we're seeing, are just that, they're opinions. They're not based on reality. And you could get large numbers of people sort of sucked into conspiracy theories, etc., because their minds, I guess, have become lazy. And we are in an obesity epidemic in many countries. And does this mean that people are spending too much time on their couch or sitting down, not moving enough, that they're lazy? Or is this, that's one component, but there's also the types of food that people are eating are not, processed foods, etc., unhealthy foods, or, so it's not just a matter of laziness or activeness. But so anyway, I think in general, technology, it changes people, and there is a double-sided coin, because in some ways it can enhance our lives, but and keep us more active, at least our mind being active. But in other ways, our physical bodies become much less active, as I pointed out. Except for some specific apps like the fitness apps. So those are just some points I wanted to bring across, put on the table.
Thank you, Professor Paul, for your excellent speech. Now I request Deputy Leader of the opposition side, Willie A. Hill.
Okay, this call is from Melbourne, Australia. So I'm not in the American scenario. So my one argument is, what if, not so much that we're controlled by technology, but what if the police acknowledge that they didn't know everything, and that we had an app that could defend us in a police confrontation, and they had to abide by that? So if on the street I'm coming home, or I'm walking home from whatever I've been doing, and a cop pulls me up, and the interaction of the cop with you didn't have to say anything. The cop would be interacting with the app, and the app would be in a position to tell the cop, no, you are the line. Go on your way. I mean, a whole lot of lives would be saved. Having said that, I'm in Australia. This is just one aspect of things that I'm seeing. A lot of lives are just people being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're done. So if we just had one app that the police would acknowledge that the ego is held in check, and that they are not right all the time. Yes, they can ask a question, but then they're asking a question to an app, and the app instantaneously gives them an answer. That's my argument.
Thank you, sir. We have our analyst, Mr. Markley. After our closing remarks, I will give you a chance. So now I request our opposition leader of this parliament for his rebuttal.
Hey, Mark.
Sharif, thank you so much for the ability to talk about this. There recently was a poll conducted by Forbes, which actually asked this question. And what was very, very interesting is it almost was a dead heat in their results. It was 52%. It made us lazier. And the other percent, it didn't make us lazier. So we can kind of see that. I go back to in my youth, and one of the programs I watched on that television when I wasn't outside playing in the yard like Rob was the Jetsons.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jetsons had great technology in there. But what was really funny is they still went to work. They still did things. Oh, He had a system where on the outside of their house, they had, in essence, a treadmill running around on the outside of the house so he could exercise physically. You still saw people going and doing things. God, I would hate to go back to the times where you carried your clothes down to the stream and used rocks to wash your clothes you're wearing in the water at the stream. Or then I begin to carry buckets and do it against a rub board, which I showed a rub board I had to some people a couple of years ago, and they had no clue what it was. And that was the way you used to wash your clothes.
Yeah.
And how has that changed it? It was there. I had a friend recently who was trying to teach his son credits, and he had his son on a cell phone plan that he had to pay for it. And when he ran out of minutes, he couldn't talk. And he was going, Dad, how do I talk to my friends? How do I talk to this girl I'm interested in? His dad says, well, you walk over there and talk to them. They're not far away. So yes, it's changed the way we've done things, and it's been there. But on the other hand, what we've learned with video games and what we've learned with computers and that technology, what we've learned with Internet of Things sensors and that, it's made us better. I can do a surgery by robotics in Singapore with a doctor at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. I couldn't do that years ago. That specialized surgery would not have happened. Did it make us lazy? Did we use it to enhance our quality of life and to make us there? I can remember for complex math, I learned how to do complex math on a slide rule. Well, when the first TI calculator came out, yes, I bought it. But, before the slide rule, we did it on a piece of paper. Oh, before that, we might have used an abacus. Yes. Are we lazier? Yes. It's easier to use my calculator than an abacus. It's easier to use it than a slide rule. Oh, but I can do a lot more with it too. I can do equations and I can do 3D modeling that I just really couldn't do before. I grew up with my grandparents, and he accepted military hardware in places. They used to build wood models of tanks and airplanes and fly them. Today, I can do those as digital models. And as we talk so often here, I can create digital twins that let us do so much more. Are we being lazy? Or are we being more effective again? I mean, one of the things I would love to buy is I want to buy a robotic lawnmower. Why? Well, Texas is warm. I don't want to pay someone to cut my yard, but boy, that would sure help me. Am I being lazy? Probably. But am I becoming more efficient? Yes, because while it's cutting my yard, I will probably do the weed whacking or the edging. So I'm still not being lazy, but I'm being more productive. I'm being more efficient. I'm learning more. There was a poll on LinkedIn that I responded to, and it was a poll about how often do you read? I was amazed. 100% of the people said they read every day. Most of us read online. Is that laziness, or can I get through more? Can I find better sources? Yes, I don't use Google, but do I search things here? I can't tell you the amount of time I spent growing up looking through cards in a big thing in the library trying to find data. That was always out of date. Do I take as much effort to do that? No, but I was sitting on my rear end flipping through cards where I can do it with a keyboard now. And I look at many more sources. I don't just use a search engine. I will go and use something like Google Scholar to go and look at publications that a search engine like Google or DuckDuckGo or others don't see because they're looking different places. I'll launch my own crawlers to go do it. And is that being lazy? No, that's being more, it takes more work, but I get more done. The other thing is the Earth is being hit right now with a huge solar flare today, tomorrow, that is disrupting communications, causing stuff like this. Would I have known that the Earth was being hit with a huge solar flare storm right now if it was not for technology? I doubt it. And we were just going there, why is everything not working? Instead of knowing the magnitude of this one, and we wouldn't have known the magnitude of this one without technology. We wouldn't even track it without technology. We would not have understood its impact without technology. Do I physically get lazy sometimes? You bet. Do I physically work hard sometimes? You bet. But all in all, it's up to the individual again. And on balance, yes, technology has made us more efficient. Technology has made us know more. Technology has helped us communicate across distance so much better. Has it hurt us in some personal relationships? Yeah. On the other hand, it's allowed us to reach on broader personal relationships. So all in all, technology has been beneficial. And the laziness is just part of it that has gone back from the beginning of time. I could hear us having this debate when we hooked up the first cow, when we hooked up the first horse, when we hooked up the first buffalo to a plow to plow the fields. What do you mean you're using those? You're too lazy. Get out there and do it yourself. But yes, we've made progress, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor David Smith. Now, I request Honorable Prime Minister for today's Parliament, Professor Rob, for closing remarks.
Well, the opposition brought up the Jetsons, which was also a show that I watched fairly regularly, but our memories are a little different about what the Jetsons showcased. I recall the episode where George Jetson was injured at work. And he was injured at work because he'd used his button pushing finger too often, and the finger was now damaged and unusable. And if you remember what he did at work is he went to work, he put his feet up on the desk, he put his finger over the button, and he punched the button. And that was his shift, just pushing a button all day long, which to a lot of us would have been hell. But did he use the time in the cartoon to expand his mind, to do research, do anything else? Nope. He just sat there and pushed a button, and there's no wonder he hated his job. Which was the subtext of the entire series. And Dave pointed out the treadmill that was outside the house, but the only time you ever saw him use it when he was walking the dog, and he didn't know enough on how to use the treadmill, so he didn't fall flat on his face and end up rolling around the treadmill. Funny, but it kind of showcased that he didn't use that treadmill much. Otherwise, he'd know how to use it. In the end, cartoons are probably not a great way to talk about or anticipate the future, but we can certainly see the impact of technology on people. David pointed out that GPS has been incredibly beneficial, and I use it a lot as well. But how many people don't know how to use a map anymore? GPS doesn't work every place, and here where I live, we have a regular instance, a recurring instance where people go out in the wilderness and they're hiking around it, and they get so lost that rescue parties have to be sent out because they don't know how to read a map. And for whatever reason, they don't apparently even know how to use the GPS on their phones, or they don't recognize that the phones don't have connectivity. Sometimes the GPS doesn't work very well. It really kind of depends on how it's been implemented on the phone. Or they forget and their battery's dead, in which case they're still screwed, or the GPS service they're using hasn't exactly mapped out the logging trails that they're walking on. All of which could be avoided if they knew how to read a map, but they haven't bothered because technology stepped in and did it for them. The underlying difficulty we have with kids is there are a lot of things that kids may not have to learn now. David pointed out that he learned on a slide rule how to do calculations. Kids today learn how to do calculations. I mean, when I was growing up, calculators came to market. We didn't necessarily have to do math anymore because the calculators would do it for you. But in the current generation, they've got computers that you can just enter the problem and the computer will do it. But what if the computer gets it wrong? What if the programming is off? What if the computer isn't available? You mentioned some of the sunspots that we're experiencing now. Some of the warning was that a lot of our technology after this current event would simply stop working. Well, what would people do? I mean, if they don't know how to do math anymore, and they require equipment to do basic things, how in the world are they going to function if that computing technology no longer works? And people shouldn't be losing all of these skills. Yes, they don't necessarily need to know how to wash clothes in the stream anymore, but they probably should know what happens when you leave clothes in water too long with regard to the growth of mold and mildew. And they certainly should know how to at the very least put clothing away so that the clothing isn't wrinkled and looks presentable when they're out, because that'll have an impact on their careers and their advancement in their chosen field. So technology, as we opened up, is neither good nor bad, but there are consequential damages to implementing technology without understanding how that's going to alter the behavior of the people that will use it. We've had it when we started off. We talked about the United States, and the United States has something called the Second Amendment, which is something that they're struggling with at the moment. When the Second Amendment was created, people had flintlock guns. In today's world, we have automatic weapons. You might think that amendment may need to be rewritten in terms of the automated weapons, because kids are now doing significant amounts of damage with semi-automatic weapons in the United States at unprecedented levels. And that's technology applied to a system. And Paul, we're not talking about laziness. We are talking about harm. And so the automating the weapons has a certain impact on the battlefield. But now let's say you've got one of those automated weapons and the autoloader fails, or you've got those automated weapons and you've got a team in the field and that automated weapon is taken out of service. If those soldiers are not also trained to fight normally, then you've lost the entire team and their effectiveness in the field. And that would be a bad outcome from the underlying technology. So I'm not, and the administration is not saying technology is bad. What often is the case is how it's implemented is bad. Technology can make people lazy. It doesn't have to, but we need to think through the implications so the people get the skills they need. Even when we don't have automation, it's issues. We have issues. For instance, if you have a flat tire, do you know how to fix it? Do you have a spare tire in the back of your car? When I was a kid, I was taught how to change a tire, but you know how many people who pass on the road that don't even know how to put on a spare tire? Because up to now, somebody else has done it for them. That wasn't automation. That was probably some guy at a tire store at a gas station, but they never bothered to learn how to do it themselves, and they'll be stuck out there for hours waiting for somebody to do something they could do themselves if they just simply bothered to learn. So technology needs to be balanced with training and skills for, in some cases, what to do if that technology fails, and in some cases, just to assure you remain active as the technology does the things that you otherwise did. I grew up on a farm and a ranch. And during the time I was young, a lot of the work was manual, and we had large teams of people doing things like picking. By the time I was an adult and eventually sold the farm, much of that work was being done by machines. And so we didn't have to employ as many people, which was great. It cut down on the overall cost. But then what happened to those workers that used to pick the fruit, that used to do the collection? Well, they became somebody else's problem, but that somebody else is always going to be the government. Some government's got to deal with those people that once had a job and now they no longer have a job. Now, again, we're not talking about them being lazy per se, but they are out of work, and it is an underlying problem. So the administration doesn't believe that technology is bad. It believes that when we implement it, we need to take into account the fact that technology does in fact make people lazy, and mitigate that laziness by giving them other things to do that round out their experiences and capabilities so that it remain viable, whether or not that technology remains in place and in use. And we anticipate the future aspects of technology, which will again cause a shift in their behavior, and make sure that people are trained and prepared for that shift. They're not sitting back and saying, hey, my job's not going anyplace. I'm pushing that button till my finger gets sore. But if somebody figures out a way for that button to push itself, I'm not going to be unemployed. I'll have someplace else to go, so that George Jetson doesn't go from being an unhappy worker to an unemployed worker. And large-scale unemployment is a problem for any administration. And so we have to be aware of the implications of technology and do what we can to make sure that technology is implemented in the best interest of our citizens, that it assures their health, safety, and well-being, which is our purpose, and doesn't cause us either unintended harm or more harm than it does good. In the end, we believe that technology does in fact make people lazy. Ignoring that fact means we'll make decisions that will be bad for our citizens, and that's not what this administration plans to do. The administration rests.
Thank you. Thank you, our Honorable Prime Minister, for today's Parliament, Professor Rob, for your excellent debate. And this debate is very important for around the world. Yes, in some point, technology give us some progressions, and there are many challenges. So for today's debate, we have our analyst, Mr. Markley, from Port TV, and already everybody knows that World Talent Economy Forum. We are collaborate with Port TV USA, and I believe that they have more than 200,000 viewers through this Roku. So hopefully this debate will be helpful for millions of people in Asia Pacific and around the world. Mr. Markley, what's your analysis for today's debate?
As Sharif knows, I'm multitasking and all of that. I'm oftentimes multitasking and doing the things in that space. But one of the things I was going to say is that I'm surprised that those on the one side did not bring up a point, which has been very much used lately, and all of that, which is this notion that people, while they are being lazy, are also sometimes doing what we have been doing for decades. And even I think somebody alluded to it in the Jetson era, and all of that, because one of the things that people have been talking about, and I don't have the kind of principles to do it sometimes, because as I just said, I can be very busy, sometimes overly busy, is you have some folks that will use this opportunities and use all of this great technology in the sense of being lazy by doing what is commonly called faking work. So they will go in there and they will come into meetings and they will come into other things, even though they don't need to be there. Like they might pop into a Zoom meeting or pop into other meetings that they don't need to be at. And that is something that I know that Elon Musk and some of the other executives have been talking about. And definitely I've even seen it in some of the jobs that I've been part of, because you got people that will literally get there and be like, wait a minute, why am I here and why is this going on? In that sense, that you do have that happens at sometimes as well. But definitely I would agree with what a lot of folks said about the great things that have happened as part of this and all along those lines. But you do have some folks that will fake the funk, as the name used to go, and all of that. But yes, I agree that it has opened up some opportunities, but it has also created, I don't know about laziness, but maybe some unrealistic expectations as well. Because meanwhile, I had a friend that recently got married after they had met while working on a project together, and they actually got married in the Redwoods and all along those lines. And when they got married, they did a lot of their dating through the internet and in that internet space and everything. And it was a whirlwind relationship. But then I've also heard of people that haven't even met yet. Like I think there's somebody that's a new friend of mine that is hopefully going to get married and be successful in that space. They live, I want to say, in the central part of the United States, and their latest love, they're both widows, is in India. So like I said, maybe they will eventually move one to the other place or another. But you do have folks that are creating those kind of spaces as well, which can be very romantic and sound wonderful. But then how much of this is figments of their imagination? Because, definitely if you're going to be together, you want to truly be together, even though we do have cases of celebrities that are able to do the whole New York, California kind of relationship and all of that. But I think that is not the norm in society. It's usually people that are going to move one to the other place, but now there are new opportunities in that space as well. And so that's just some of the thoughts that were crossing my head. And I did read that article. I think they call it presentism where you just kind of like pop into things and you're basically faking like you're at work and all of that, and you're not actually being truly at work. And I didn't hear anybody mention that within the debate. So that's one of the things that I would add to this great conversation. By the way, I'm glad to see Willie Hill in the house. It's been a minute since I've seen Willie. He said he was in Australia and all of that. So glad to see him in the house. We've been missing him around the place and all of that. So that's just some of my immediate thoughts. And we are glad to have this conversation on Pod TV and all along those lines. But on that note, I'm going to get on out of here. Got other things going on. And at some point, I've actually got to get out of here. I've got a haircut due today as well. So I could not do that in this whole internet thing because until they figure out the drone coming with the barber and the scissors, I still got to go to the barber shop and all along those lines. It's just for a beard trim. The hair, I think, is all right. But we do want the beard trim. I had some sad news, so we're going to have a celebration of life. And of course, I want the family to not be looking at me like, why is Mr. McGruff here? And all of that. But just some thoughts and even a little playful reference to another show with Mr. McGruff and all of that. But that's just some of my quick thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Markley. Mr. Willie, you want to add some comments?
And remember, genius is truly.
Can you unmute, please?
No, it was just inspiring to listen to a lot of the points for and against. I just got so engaged in what they were talking about. Yeah. Hey, Mark, it's been a while. Good to see you again.
Yes, good to see you too.
No, see, the dilemma with this debate today is a lot of this is we don't see this in Australia. So for me, it's just like it's sitting on the edge. When I brought up that topic about an app that could sort of debate on my behalf, it was just something off the tip of my head, like just something that's out there. It not something that I would do, but hey, this is what it is. Okay, so I learned it there.
Thank you. Professor Paul, you want to add any comments?
Hello, my name is Kiasi.
Yes, can everybody mute that is not talking? There's a lot of background noise in this.
That's me, and if you can mute me, you can go ahead and do that because I'm actually on something else.
I mean, it's not respectful to other people on the panels, etc., to be playing a radio in the background or something while you're talking. I mean, unfortunately, Mark, I missed most of what you were saying because of the background noise. But anyway, Jacques Ellul was a famous French philosopher, and he wrote a book called The Technological Society. He had a lot to say on technology and also on propaganda. And, he talked about laziness, whether technology was making people lazy. And it's not really the right term, lazy. Technology, as it advances, does displace a lot of people. They lose their jobs as the world moves on, and they're doing things they need to retrain and things. So I think and we tend to label people, say that are if large numbers of people are cast out of work for some reason or other, and they don't get replacement jobs fairly soon, we tend to label them as being lazy. And that's not really the right term, I think. A lot of people are, they take time to get over the trauma of losing a job, and they're not sure what they want to do, so they have to do the retraining, etc. So, lazy, the idea of lazy is really a label that you give to people who behave a certain way or do certain things, and it's just a label. Like, it's not, a person is much more than their label. And there needs to be a strong distinction between, your state of mind and your physical being, because, if it used to be years ago, if you saw somebody who was really obese, you would think, well, this is a lazy person. They don't get enough exercise. Now there's a lot of other factors, and because so many people could be labeled as obese, that sort of idea has sort of gone, is not so prevalent now. But laziness of mind, is not really the right term. It's more of a distraction. Our society is extremely distracted. There's always multiple things trying to grab our attention. are, we can only focus and do one thing at a time. Like some people have the mistaken idea that they can, do multiple things at one time, and that's just not an efficient way. It's not how our body basically works. So, again, it's hard to, when you talk about technology in general, it's very hard because you can go back to the beginning of civilization and how people specialized, and you could argue just about anything is technology. I think this debate is more on present day technology, not washing clothes or with rocks and washboards. I mean, we could go as long as one thing that separates us from many other species is that we do use objects, we use tools, right? And you could argue that those are all technology, and then this debate can be about anything really. So I think it's more of present day society with the prevalence of iPhones, with the prevalence of automation from computers. It disrupts people's lives in many different ways. So many people are becoming labeled as being lazy because they're not doing a specific task or jobs that they're supposed to be doing. It's not because they're lazy in general, it's because they're distracted completely. They want to do other things, and many people don't even want to work because there's so many distractions. So there's this idea of the great resignation, in our society. So anyway, thanks, Sharif. There's lots of food for thought in these conversations. I mean, just to give you an idea, like when the talking was going on and there was a radio on in the background or something, that really forced us as listeners to really be active listeners and try to really pay attention and focus. Whereas, if we did that for a while, eventually our minds would almost become lazy and just kind of not listen and tune it out because it's a lot of effort to activate these filters in our brains to concentrate and to focus and things like that. And with all of the distractions in our society, people are doing less and less of that. The last point I want to make is that this reliance on technology or what's in our present society is making people much less resilient. Like, okay, so your tire, you blow a tire, people, you can either stand there and look like, hey, I don't know what to do, or you can say, okay, well, I got to take the tire off the hub. There's hey, open the trunk. Hey, there's a tire in there. I got to put that onto the car. There's a tool there that you can loosen the nuts and take it off and put the new one on. There's very little you need to know. If you've never done it before, if you have some basic understanding, I mean, one of the things that you might do is you might tighten one nut completely and go around the tire and do that. And then there's a problem because the tire will be on crooked. You have to tighten each nut a quarter turn, say. So there's a few tricks that you have to know that can really mess you up if you don't know what you're doing. And what people tend to do is, they can go on the internet and find a YouTube video that will tell you just about how to do anything. So is that being lazy? No, we're using the tools that are available, but without, in Canada recently, people lost internet, some people for up to 4 days. And, they basically, you have to adjust quickly. I mean, we all need to be MacGyvers. The most resilient people are those that are willing to adapt to their situation, not to throw all of these mental blocks saying, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how to do this, put your head down and try to figure it out. We have to get rid of this laziness of mind in order to in order to survive, in order to do well in our society. And the idea of this solar flare, if we have a Carrington type event, we could lose internet for months at a time. All the transformers could be blown in the US, for example. And how do you make new transformers to replace them if you don't have spares already built because you have no power to do the manufacturing processes? So, an event like, a massive solar coronal discharge wiping out electronics, would really set us back to the Stone Ages, and it would be very difficult to recover. So people need to work on their self-reliance and their resiliency in order to, so get rid of this laziness of mind in order to try to, prepare for the unexpected events that may occur.
Thank you,
Paul,
Professor.
Paul, first off, my sincere apologies, but as Mr. Sharif will tell you, I'm actually the de facto program director for the Pod TV network. So I was actually getting rid of one show while actually maintaining the show here, which is actually airing on the Pod TV on the Roku set. So I was making sure that that was running and all of that. So there was a little bit of multitasking going on as well. And to kind of come back to your point, I do find a lot of people are doing that because they might even have a radio, so it was actually two computers on at the time. So they might have and it was actually one computer on two different browsers, but that's actually what it was, and all of that. But they may have a multiple computers. They might have a TV, because actually I've got the TV on Roku right now, and they might even be having multiple streams of electronics going on. And I've even seen people being in Zoom meetings while washing their dishes and or doing their laundry or a number of other things that you can't necessarily do if you are in the office place. So that might be a counter to the laziness argument, because there might be some people that are actually being very overly productive because they're being productive in their house because they're washing dishes, and then at the same time the Zoom meeting, they're listening to that conversation with their boss. So that I don't know what's happening in the past, kind of along the lines of the Jetson conversations and all of that. So once again, my sincere apologies to you, Mr. Beckwith, and all of that, but there was some multitasking going on with the network and all of that.
Okay, well, I thank you. I'd just like to add that you don't have that background noise on right now, so thank you.
That's because we're done with the transition.
Yeah. But if you can't get an hour to go on a Zoom call, I mean, your delivery was, I'm sure you had lots of good things to say, but most of us probably had no idea what you were saying, apart from the first minute or so. And then your mind the background noise, we're used to talking on Zoom calls where you can actually listen and hear what the person is saying. And if you can't hear what they're saying, it sort of negates the point of what you're saying. So, just a point. If nobody's told you this before, then, I'm the first one. I mean, maybe just think about it next time you're on a Zoom call. That's all.
Well, like I said, I respectively will hear what you've got to say, and in this case, respectively disagree, because sometimes you've got to be in multiple places at once.
Okay.
Since
So
we're basically a
let me
four-man
ask-
operation.
Okay, so let
Thank
me
you,
ask
everyone.
the other panelists if they found this, if they listened and heard what this gentleman was saying. Like Sharif, did you understand what he was saying?
I
Sharif.
had difficulty hearing him. The back. But if you're running multiple machines, just mute the machine you're not on.
Exactly.
It's just easy to do.
It's
Sharif, as a moderator, you should care about the quality of the programs. And if somebody's talking and nobody can hear what they're saying because of background noise, I would question the quality of the program. You might lose viewers, etc.
I understand your concern. I'm sorry about that. And I know actually Mr. Markley has to do a lot of work. He also supporting our program. So it's actually, we understand all of your concern, and I'm sorry about that. And thank you,
fine.
Mr. Markley.
It's just, for future. Yeah. I mean, that's all.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Mr. Markley, for all of your support for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, Professor David Smith, Professor Rob, Professor Paul, and Mr. Willie for your excellent support for this debate. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with your government, with your corporations, and with academia. And you know that World Talent Economy Forum, especially in Asia Pacific, with Malaysia Prime Minister Office, Singapore Prime Minister Office, and many countries in South Asia, Middle East, we are working because we are planning for some largest conference. One of our conference will be launched in next year, March, Nikola Tesla Technology Conference. Beside that, we are planning more. Rwanda government actually working with World Talent Economy Forum for Talent Economy Summit. So hopefully with all of our initiative will be helpful for the grassroots level community, especially for the developing nations. And thank you, all of my friends from the developed world, because your support is very important for us. And especially, I want to give thanks to Pod TV and all of our speakers, those who continuously support World Talent Economy Forum and support our project. Thank you, bye-bye, and take care.
Take it easy.
Thank you.